In the late autumn of 2008, a private aerospace startup in California was exactly 3 seconds away from complete unmitigated extinction. 3 consecutive launches had exploded before reaching orbit. The company's bank accounts were drained to absolute zero. The founder was sleeping on friends' couches, secretly taking out personal loans just to make payroll for a skeletal staff. The entire Silicon Valley establishment had declared the venture a delusional $100 million write-off. But what Wall Street failed to understand was that this wasn't a story about a tech startup. It was a story about an empire being forged through pure, unyielding economic warfare. Welcome to the Empire Archive from Behind the Empire. This is the untold genesis of SpaceX. To truly comprehend the sheer madness of what SpaceX attempted, you have to look back to the moment the empire was entirely impossible. In 2002, the global aerospace market was an absolute cartel. It was a closed, multi-billion-dollar loop controlled exclusively by sovereign nations and heavily subsidized military-industrial contractors. Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and state-backed agencies held a permanent monopoly on the sky. When a 31-year-old Elon Musk decided he wanted to spark public interest in a Mars mission, he didn't set out to build rockets. He set out to buy them. He traveled to Moscow with a team of consultants, sitting in lavish boardrooms, attempting to purchase refurbished Soviet intercontinental ballistic missiles. The Russian aerospace generals didn't just refuse him, they openly mocked him, spitting on his shoes and treating him like an amateur.com millionaire playing a dangerous game. On the long flight back to Los Angeles, Musk didn't look at market reports. He looked at periodic tables. He calculated what is known in physics as first principles. He realized that the raw materials required to construct a functional rocket, aerospace-grade aluminum, titanium, copper, and carbon fiber, amounted to a mere 2% of the retail price traditional defense contractors charged the government for a single launch. The market wasn't expensive because space was hard. The market was expensive because the legacy monopoly was inefficient, bloated, and corrupt. Musk realized he didn't need to negotiate with foreign superpowers. He needed to re-engineer capitalism from the ground up. In 2006, the theory met reality. SpaceX set up its testing ground on Kwajalein Atoll, a tiny strip of coral reef in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. They brought out the Falcon 1. Flight 1 lasted exactly 25 seconds before a fuel leak caused a massive structural fire, dropping the rocket directly into the ocean. Flight 2, launched a year later, made it higher, but the engine shut down prematurely before reaching orbit. By August 2008, the financial pressure was unsustainable. Flight 3 carried vital military and NASA satellites. Millions of dollars were on the line. Seconds after liftoff, a tiny, unforeseen timing delay caused the spent first stage to bump against the second stage during separation. The rocket tore itself to pieces. The financial damage was total. Musk had poured his entire wealth from the sales of Zip2 and PayPal into the company. SpaceX was entirely out of cash. In London and Washington, competitors prepared press releases to mark the quiet death of the private space experiment. Musk faced a brutal choice: file for bankruptcy or risk every remaining dollar he had left on Earth. With enough capital left for exactly one final desperate attempt, SpaceX rolled Flight 4 onto the Pacific launch pad. If a single valve failed, if a single line of code glitched, the company would dissolve overnight. At 7:15 p.m., the engines ignited. The rocket cleared the tower. For 9 minutes, the engineering team sat in absolute breathless silence. And then, the telemetry screen flashed green. Flight 4 had achieved a perfect orbit. It was a historic technical achievement, but more importantly, it was a massive liquidity injection. Within days, a stunned NASA stepped into the room, awarding SpaceX a crucial $1.6 billion cargo resupply contract to keep the International Space Station alive. The Empire had survived its execution date. With its survival secured, SpaceX didn't fall into the comfortable routine of a standard defense contractor. They weaponized their capital to execute a maneuver that legacy players insisted violated the laws of physics, reusability. For 50 years, every space agency on Earth built multi-hundred-million-dollar rockets, flew them once, and dropped them into the ocean as trash. It was the financial equivalent of flying a commercial Boeing 747 from New York to London and then intentionally crashing the airplane into the Atlantic. By mastering the complex fluid dynamics of propulsive vertical landings, SpaceX transformed rockets into reusable fleet vehicles. They slashed the cost of launching mass into low Earth orbit by a staggering 70%. They didn't just beat their competitors on price, they completely broke the global economic model. By 2018, SpaceX was launching more mass into orbit than entire sovereign superpowers combined. But the rockets were never the true destination. They were merely the logistics layer for an entirely different multi-trillion-dollar monopoly that was being built silently in the shadows of the upper atmosphere. SpaceX had conquered the physics of the sky. Now they were preparing to conquer the financial mechanics of Wall Street, merge with artificial intelligence, and execute the largest IPO in human history. That story is in part 2. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the conclusion. On June 12, 2026, the global financial markets witnessed a tectonic shift that completely shattered public market history. SpaceX officially went public on NASDAQ. Within a single day of frantic trading, its valuation surged past $2 trillion, instantly making Elon Musk the world's first official trillionaire. But this isn't a story about rockets. This is the story of how a private space startup transformed into an untouchable global data monopoly, merged with advanced artificial intelligence, and bound the financial future of millions of everyday citizens to a high-stakes sci-fi vision. Welcome back to the Empire Archive from behind the empire. This is the conclusion of SpaceX. To understand why Wall Street investors swarmed the SpaceX IPO with over $250 billion in raw demand, you have to realize that the space industry changed forever in 2019. Up until that point, SpaceX made its money by launching satellites for other companies. But they quickly realized that the real wealth wasn't in the transport. It was in the data infrastructure. They launched Starlink. By leveraging their own reusable rockets, SpaceX began deploying thousands of low Earth orbit satellites at a cost structure their competitors couldn't even match on paper. While traditional telecom giants spent billions burying physical fiber optic cables through mountains and across oceans, SpaceX quietly built a global satellite grid that bypassed the surface of the Earth entirely. The numbers disclosed in their recent S1 prospectus are staggering. By 2025, Starlink broadband subscriptions accounted for over 61% of SpaceX's entire revenue model, generating over $11 billion in recurring cash flow. SpaceX had quietly claimed ownership over 2/3 of every single active satellite currently operating in space. They had built an unbreakable global utility monopoly. But a global utility monopoly still didn't justify a $2 trillion public valuation. To achieve that astronomical number, Elon Musk executed a calculated corporate maneuver in February 2026 that completely shifted the company's investment thesis. Musk announced the formal merger of his private artificial intelligence startup xAI directly into the corporate entity of SpaceX. Wall Street suddenly woke up and realized that SpaceX was no longer an aerospace play. It was an AI infrastructure play. SpaceX immediately broke ground on an unprecedented project, space-based orbital AI data centers. By positioning hundreds of thousands of liquid-cooled GPUs directly in low Earth orbit, powered by raw, constant solar energy, SpaceX bypassed the massive electrical grid shortages, real estate costs, and environmental regulations plaguing land-based data hubs on Earth. The financial payoff was instant. In March 2026, their new orbital data network secured a monumental infrastructure deal with AI developer Anthropic, worth an unbelievable $1.25 billion per month. SpaceX had built an infrastructure loop where their own rockets launched their own satellites, which ran their own artificial intelligence models, funded by the largest tech firms on Earth. Yet beneath the historic euphoria of the NASDAQ launch, severe cracks are beginning to form in the financial foundation. Independent research groups like Morningstar have issued urgent alerts to institutional buyers, calculating that SpaceX's fundamental underlying assets are worth less than half of its current public price, openly labeling the $2.1 trillion valuation as extremely speculative. The prospectus reveals a terrifying burn rate. Despite massive revenues, SpaceX posted a staggering $4.94 billion net loss for 2025, a layout that accelerated into a single quarter loss of $4.28 billion in Q1 2026 alone. The company is carrying over $29 billion in long-term debt, including a massive $20 billion bridge loan that must be repaid within the next 6 months. Regulators and political figures are expressing deep concern because the tech-heavy NASDAQ fast-tracked SpaceX directly into its flagship indices just days after listing, passive index funds are now legally mandated to buy hundreds of billions of dollars of SpaceX stock, regardless of its valuation. The retirement portfolios and savings accounts of millions of everyday citizens are now directly exposed to the financial stability of Elon Musk's corporate empire. Every corporate empire we profile on this channel exists to serve a predictable set of parameters, to maximize shareholder value, to dominate a market quarterly, and to enrich its executive board. But SpaceX operates under an entirely different, volatile philosophy. The public registration document outlines the true parameters of the mission: to make life multiplanetary and to extend the light of human consciousness to the stars. The multi-billion-dollar cash flows from Starlink, the historic capital raised on Wall Street, and the complex merger with artificial intelligence are not the final goals. They are merely a massive capital engine designed to fund a singular, obsessive obsession, turning humanity into a multiplanetary species. Traditional corporate logic dictates that you build an empire to enjoy the wealth. Elon Musk built a $2 trillion empire simply to spend every single dollar attempting to leave the planet behind. Whether this historic public listing represents the true dawn of an interplanetary economy or the single largest speculative bubble in financial history is a question the market will answer very soon. But one thing remains completely undeniable: the business world has never seen an empire quite like this. Thank you for watching Behind the Empire. If you want to understand the real, unvarnished playbooks behind the world's most powerful empires, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who studies business. Drop a comment below right now. Is the $2 trillion SpaceX IPO a historic breakthrough or a dangerous market bubble? Let us know your thoughts, and we will see you in the next file.